we got K-Dub, who is calling in from Virginia, who wants to talk about the chat poll that we had on YouTube here. K-Dub, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Hey guys, good to talk to you. I came in kind of late, but I saw that poll, and I feel like at least all the friends around me, and I hang with a pretty liberal crowd these days. Every one of us that was brought up in religion feels some kind of trauma, and myself included. And you know, a lot of the folks that I hang with are members of the LGBT community. And a lot of them have a very similar story to mine. I personally feel like my growth was stunted because of it. Southern Baptist, being told that being gay is the worst thing you can be. So I tried really hard to be straight for many years, and it was such a waste. And had that not been preached to me, and of course you feel like they're talking to you right there sitting in the pew, had that not been stuck in my head, I think I would have let myself be who I am a lot sooner in life. So I feel a bit traumatized by that, and angry. I've been angry for a long time, and I've been officially an atheist since 2012, but it's hard to let go of that anger.
Yeah, and just for context, for those who aren't watching this live and who are listening to this the podcast for, right, our chat poll today was, I think, something along the lines of, does a religious upbringing, I think, I can't remember the wording off the top of my head, it inherently cause trauma or does cause trauma? And you're saying in your experience, it did, in fact, cause you trauma, that it is sort of inherent to your trauma was your religious upbringing. I mean, am I understanding you right, K-Dub?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the people in my circle we're in a southern region, so
yeah.
Southern Baptist is one of the big ones. But you could name off several other denominations that are so similar. Pentecostal folks, and any flavor of Baptist, pretty much. And my parents were not super conservative; they were older. But I had some good experiences in the church. Who didn't?
Sure.
Well, not everybody, but I sang in the choir. A small town, we're friends, did some fun things. But those fun things could have come from any community organization, minus the Jesus part.
Yeah, and speaking to that real quickly, because I've talked about this in my experience, Kate, growing up in Texas, right? Like, there is definitely it's more common to go to a church and to be part of a church community, even for those who aren't inherently religious. That oftentimes folks will go to church around here because they are just the source of community centers, particularly in Waco, where my old friend David Oliverio has a joke who says there's more Christians than people in Waco, which is very funny because it's kind of true. But so I live in Austin now, and I have liberal friends, and I have folks who are much more secular, and I do get the question every once in a while of like, why do I talk about this stuff? Why are we even interested in these kinds of subjects, especially if I'm not even religious anymore? And I think it's because there is such a strong hold over people with this stuff. And like, I'm one of the exceptions. You are one of the exceptions, K-Dub, of like folks who are able to break out of this stranglehold that a religious upbringing sort of uniquely can give you in many ways, right? There are some people that never do. And that's terrifying, but also sad, right? Like, I am interested in showing people, hey, there's a different way you can live your life in a way that doesn't have to be as repressive, doesn't have to be as restricting, or doesn't have to limit, in my case too, limit what I thought it meant to be a good person, right? Because I also didn't have an understanding of what it meant to be fully good without being Christian. And that's obviously silly in hindsight, but was a very real reality for me. It is a reality for millions of people. So I hear you, KW. Yeah, specifically the wording of our poll was, is a religious upbringing always traumatic, right? And while I can't say it's always traumatic for everybody, it is certainly traumatic for those who have decided to leave, right? For many of us, because it is a reason why a lot of us do leave, because of the hardships that come from it. It is a stereotype about our community that we're all hurt by it, and that we're just talking about our hurt all the time. But hey, if we're all hurt by something, doesn't that mean there's a problem? Doesn't that mean that there's something that should be fixed? Isn't that always interesting when Christians are like, oh, you're just mad because the church hurt you? Yeah. Yeah, that's why, kind of. Don't you think that's an issue? Don't you think that's worth talking about? But anyway, I'm going on my own rant here. Dr. Darrel Ray, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the whole notion of trauma needs to be more nuanced, because not everybody that was in a religion was traumatized.
Sure.
However, there's nuances that are important, and that is, you may not have experienced trauma within the religion. Being a white male in a semi-conservative, independent Christian church, that's what I was raised in, I was actually in a position of privilege. My father was chairman of the board. So I got by with a lot of things. But it wasn't until I left the church that the consequences hit. It's like you're in this bubble and you're being protected. And if I was a woman in that same church, I would have been shamed for having sex outside of marriage. I had sex outside of marriage, but I wasn't shamed for it. But a woman in that church would have been, if I'd have gotten pregnant outside of it. There's all those things that would have traumatized them within the church. When I left the church, the trauma begins with this social isolation, with the loss of community, with the potential depression that comes from not having any support system around him anymore. Yeah. So where the trauma occurs is also important. It can happen within the church, and it happen on the leaving of the church, or it can happen, of course, in both places, and often does in both places. And then again, there are people who weren't traumatized. Yeah. We're not here to diagnose, and I think don't self-diagnose. That's like we talked earlier. You got to go to a professional. They will diagnose you, or they'll help you diagnose. But just get better. What you're diagnosed with is not as important as what do you need to do to get better and live your best life. And that's my 2 cents.
There you go. K-Dub, any other thoughts you want to share with us? Thanks so much for sharing your story, by the way.
Absolutely. I think that the friends that I have now that don't think much about it, that are still churchgoers, are I call them Christian light folks. Episcopals. For instance, Episcopals and some Methodists. And they're the only churches that show up and as a vendor for the LGBT festivals. Go looking and see who it is that shows up. Not counting the Universalists, Unitarians. We love them, but they don't really count. Episcopals are the ones that are there. The only gay-friendly denomination, it seems, at least where I am. But thanks for taking my call and listening. I appreciate it, y'all.
Thanks for calling.
Y'all have absolutely. Have a good night.